Confused? You won't be. Get ready to dissect the anatomy of a research article. Every article has a title, and that might seem obvious and unimportant on the surface. But in reality, the title is an index field upon which a database searches to retrieve an article. While cute titles grab our attention in a popular magazine to entice us to read and purchase that magazine, research article titles are succinctly summarizing the content of that article and serve an important role for discovering the research. In the title area, we'll also find author information. Listed below the title or in the footer of the first page, we'll find the author's names as well as their credentials to help establish their authority to write on this particular topic. We'll also find their affiliation. Where did they do this particular research? Is it associated with a particular university or research institute? We'll also find any conflicts of interest in this area. The abstract is a summary of the entire article. It's a mini version of the article and contains the subsets of a full article. You'll notice it has the study design, the background, the methods, the results, the conclusion. By reading the abstract, we can decide, do we want to read the article further? Does it truly address our research question? Is it what we need? Is it worth getting interlibrary loan? But most importantly, it helps us to discover this research. It's one of the default fields that the databases search to retrieve an article. The introduction section provides the reason for the research and will provide us with background information on the topic, any theoretical basis in which the research will be based, and provide a literature review which will examine the prior studies that have addressed the question and serve as the foundation to bring the research forward in the question to be studied in the methods section. The methods section of the article describes how the study was carried out. This is useful for both analyzing and possibly replicating the study. You'll find there are 5 distinct subsections within the methods section of a primary research article. The headings in various publications may vary, but it should include information on the participants, the procedure, data collection, the measures used, and the data analysis. Let's take a closer look. To get to the methods section and take a closer look, we'll scroll past the title, past the abstract, and past the introduction section to get to the methods section. In this example article, at the top of the methods section, it indicates that this study has Institutional Review Board approval. IRB approval is required if you're working with human subjects. And then it tells us the study design, which can help us determine whether we're looking at a quantitative or a qualitative study. In this case, we have a prospective, single-blind, randomized study. Next, we get to the first subsection about the participants, which describe how the research population, the subjects, or the sample were selected, what type of sample, and how many participants, and what are their important characteristics. Here it's listed as inclusion and exclusion criteria. Next, it tells us how they were allocated and they were randomized for this particular study. Scrolling forward, we'll get to the procedure area. And the procedure explains the treatment of the study groups in the study. And this will vary based on the study design. For this particular study, we have an intervention, and that is what they're actually doing something to the participants. So it's describing it, what they've done, and in this case, it's illustrating it, which is not necessarily typical, but it can be. In any case, we know what they're doing. Next, we're moving on to the data collection area, and that will describe how information is going to be gathered and the types of information that they're going to be gathering. How they're going to gather that information depends on the measures that they use. In this case, the outcome measures are referring to standardized instruments, and that terminology instruments refers to the tool that they're using to gather the data. So those would be validated and might be a survey, a test, or a questionnaire, depending on the type of research study undertaken, whether it's quantitative or qualitative. If it's qualitative, we might be looking at interviews. In this case, they used a short-form health survey, a foot and ankle outcomes questionnaire, and a visual analog scale for pain to gather their data. And the last section in this area would be data analysis. Now, the data, depending on whether it's quantitative or qualitative data, will be analyzed differently. In this case, we have a quantitative study that uses statistical analysis, and here it describes the different tests that were applied to the collected data. Here we see they use the Manu-Whitney test and the chi-square test. If this were a qualitative study, we may see what type of coding they used to understand their data. The results section is a summary of the outcomes of that data analysis. That summary may be presented in tables or graphs or charts, depending on the type of data collected. It should be very transparent, and it should indicate any type of bias or any type of limitations that occurred in gathering that data. That transparency allows you to analyze the data and verify the meaning for yourself. Following the results section is the discussion section. This is the interpretive section of the research study. It evaluates the results to see if they validate the research hypothesis, discusses any limitations the study has to address the research question, discusses how it may have compared to previous studies, and what the application of the findings may be. It may also suggest ways that research can be taken further to address those limitations, and how research can once again be carried forward to continue the conversation on the topic. The conclusion is a summary area that wraps up the study by restating the purpose of the research and the bottom line takeaway of the interpreted results. Often, when you're reading a research study, you may actually begin by reading the end, the conclusion. Sometimes studies can be hard to digest, and it helps to get that bottom line. So don't feel like when you're reading a research article, you have to start at the beginning. We may have already discussed the conclusion section, but we're not done yet. The last section within the research article is the references list, and the references provide the attribution to the studies that were referenced in the literature review. These citations provide us with all the information we need to find the article and read it in its entirety so that we can understand that article in its full context. We can also use it to verify the accuracy of the claims made by the current researcher. Scrolling through the references list, we find a rich trail of scholarly work conversing on a topic. Use it to find valuable research for your assignments. Need a research article? You've got this.